Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder. And today we will have a look at the RN Francesco Caracciolo, and I just love the name of it. And the following scenes will give you a bit of a deceptive interpretation of what the ship can do. And honestly, this ship makes no sense whatsoever when it comes to the firepower, because it's the first Italian battleship that has higher caliber than 12 inches, in this case 381mm 40 Armstrong cannons and or 15-inch guns, and 8 of them with a reload of 30.2 seconds with a fully trained ace crew. Not 30 seconds flat out, but 30.2. I don't know why exactly that number, but that's the way it is. And then we also have 12 152mm guns. And it's the first Italian ship that actually has a battle rating of 6.7 other than the RN Duilio. The problem is that all Italian battleships are far better, and it makes no sense why the RN Leonardo da Vinci, the RN Andrea Doria, the RN Dante Alighieri are at 6.3, because they are so much better. Even though they have only 12-inch guns, yet those shells have ridiculous penetration, and the same goes for the RN Conte di Cavour and the before mentioned RN Duilio. But it goes further, because when it comes to the performance, all the Italian ships can hold themselves. They are capable to face any enemy that there is. Yet it is really interesting that those ships are not really often seen on the waves of War Thunder. And the Francesco Caracciolo is the first Italian battleship that actually never existed. It's a project. I understand why Gaijin implemented it in order to bridge the gap between the ships that we have with 305 or 320mm guns and the really modern, extremely powerful 15-inch guns that we see, for instance, on the Roma, which will come at some point. Now, you saw the gameplay versus the Scharnhorst and the French battleship, and it looks like, wow, this is really powerful. And also, yeah, this ship has some good things about it. First of all, 15-inch guns. If you think about the German ones that also have, with the Bayern class 15-inch guns, 8 of them, but they have a reload of 26 seconds. They have thicker armor, and they have more usable secondaries. I say this because in battle, as you can see, the reload goes up to 18 seconds for 6-inch secondaries. That is horrendous. But what really kills the ship effectively is not just a comparison to the other Italian battleships, but if you just look at it, that it has one shell type for its main battery. Just like with the not Richelieu, with the Dunkirk, I thought, that's a fluke on the dev server, but no, this ship only has SAP. It doesn't have an HE shell, it doesn't have an AP shell, it doesn't have an HE base use shell. It's a simple SAP CBC round, and it's not really good at it either. Even when you compare it to a lot of the 12-inch guns, for example, the Russians with their monstrous 12-inch SAP round, here you have only 38.5 kilograms. It's not terrible, but it's not really spectacular. And, if you look at the Queen Elizabeth class, the HMS Barham, with its AP shell, which I didn't really find too spectacular either, has 30 kilograms and more penetration. And it's really the penetration that absolutely kills the ship. Because It has 437 millimeters of penetration at 1 kilometer, and at 10 kilometer it falls off to 324 millimeters. Yet at this battle rating, you see very often those open ocean maps, the circle in the ocean, where you fight up to 15 kilometers, where you have less than 300 millimeters of penetration. And this gets further amplified by the fact that you have a muzzle velocity of 700 meters per second. That means the lead is quite extraordinary in comparison to other ships that have 800 and 900 and almost to 1,000 meters per second, which is really feelable. That means at range, enemy ships can literally dodge your shells. Now I give the ship props for the really good firing angles and the arrangement of the turrets. It looks like the back half of a Congo class, just, mirrored. There is not that much superstructure and also not that much AA. The AA is also not really effective, even though we have 12 40mm single mounts and 8 102mm with time fuse. But other than this, there is not that much to destroy. The funny placement of the 8 102mm on the front section of the turrets, all of them, is really cool looking, but, it's okay. Then there is the armor. We have a 300mm belt, so that is just short of 12 inches. And we also have a turtleback, which is 23 millimeters and is also not really flat. It's relatively steep, with a constructional armor slope from 39 to 40, 47, 50 millimeters. That means the ship is somewhat surprisingly tanky if you angle it, but if you give a fat broadside, you will feel damage really quick. Deck plating 56 to 86 millimeters. That's not terribly weak, but the inner deck plating with 18 millimeters, when an AP shell actually penetrates and detonates above that plating, the splinters will still go through. And the turrets themselves with 300 millimeters are not that terrible. What is actually really good is the turret faces with 400 millimeters. This is real armor, but yet it gets knocked out all the time. And the magazines are huge and on the waterline. Like, they are huge, especially the front ones. So the ship, when angling, is tanky. The problem is that at range you cannot really do that much harm, and this is why I picked this battle, where I'm hammering an enemy, I think it's a Fuso, now for minutes. We both are dueling each other. I'm somewhat with reversing and forwarding, acceleration duking his shells. He tries to do the same with mine, but it's like two fat people dance. It's not really pleasing for the eyes, is it? Yet I think it's such a good demonstration. If an enemy battleship is angling, then there is not that much that you can do. If this would be the stock shell and I would have a mediocre AP shell, I would get more out of this. Now the problem is that if you only have one shell type, what really screws you over are the repair mechanics. Because when you need to repair a turret because it's damaged, in this ship, and it must be a bug, the repair times are also enhanced. And that really is terrible. Because then you need to repair longer and you need to fire between salvos. So that means all of a sudden you're looking at 40 seconds reload, even up to 45 seconds, especially if the turret in question has a damaged barbette. You know the deal. And That is frustrating, especially if you hit over and over again, but you just can't kill an enemy battleship. If you just can't really inflict pain on it and force it into the same repair and longer reload cycle, you just don't get anything done. And very often I found myself in the situation to get sunk, then switching to one of the other battleships with 320mm guns or even the 12-inch guns, and just absolutely obliterating enemy ships at range with just such a much more intense DPM. We're talking about ships that have 10 to 13 guns. They might not always have the same firing angles, but I would change it any day of the week. This is a ship that also makes no sense. So if you would put this ship at 6.3 and the current 6.3 ships at 6.7 or even 7.0, you know, nobody would really be too aroused because of it. Nobody would really complain too hard because Dante Alighieri, Andrea Doria, and Leonardo da Vinci are undertiered as all hell. But this ship, it tries to make up for all the Italian bias, if you will, for the Italian battleships. It's insane. And it makes no sense to put the ship where it is. It was also absolutely not really necessary with its performance, because if the 15-inch guns at 6.7 are worse than some or most 12-inch guns at range of World War I ships at 6.3 with more barrels and or faster reload and more effective armor, I just don't get it. You know, there is also the battle rating difference between the RN Duilio and the RN Conte di Cavour. Very similar ships. And in a very compressed blue water fleet environment, why is there a difference of 0.3? It makes no sense. I'm not mad at it. You know, it's just a War Thunder thing, but it's just so wild when there should be decompression to 9.0 at this point. Easily. And you just don't have any of this, and then there are those unexplainable battle rating differences of 0.3 that just seem random. And so I'm just kind of speechless about the performance of the ship, other than to say that it is kind of frustrating, and I just, you know, could deceive you by making some sort of compilation where I just one-shot ships like the Scharnhorst and the Bretagne, I think it was, and, you know, I could force myself through days of playing to get those freak shells or the perfect broadside, or just steal a kill, you know, and just make this ship look good. But no. So this is the first Italian capital ship that actually sucks. And it sucks so hard. It would be an embarrassment for the US naval ships with 14-inch guns. Actually, I think I prefer them at this moment. And you know that I'm not. In fact, this ship is so bad it could be French. It could be French and you couldn't tell the difference in terms of raw performance. This is how bad the performance of those shells are. Now, you could cope and say, oh, but at 15 kilometers, due to the low muzzle velocity of 700 meters per second, you have plunging fire. Yeah, but you don't have the penetration retention. You don't have the overall penetration. And even then, the plunging fire, which is more like a theoretical thing in real life, and also in gaming, you know, it's sketchy at times when you look at other games. It has no practical use here in War Thunder. Because, you know, again, due to the low muzzle velocity, you could dodge those shells, quite literally, and in return just hammer out very often more DPM with much more powerful shells even on a flatter trajectory, find weaknesses on this ship more than before those shells can find weaknesses on a ship at 15 kilometers. It might be some sort of cool gimmick, but effectively, when it comes to most battles in War Thunder, it's not worth it. And you know, this, I think it's the same guy that now respawns in another ship. And this time, you know, he comes in with the, I think, Aichi and Mutsu with 16-inch guns that have, I think, was it 24-second reloads and significantly more penetration. Yeah, he seals the deal. And you know, I love the idea of the ship, but it's absolutely not necessary for the Italians in terms of performance. It's a downgrade for a higher battle rating, and it makes no sense. It's useless, and that's the best that I can say about it. Having said this, that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give this video a like if it did. For you, it's just a click. For me, it means the world. Subscribe if you want to see more. And as usual, we will see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.